spirits was picked up a little bit last practice with the.
What do you mean?
DeMeco's did kind of address the skirmish at the Texans practice yesterday. Today, it was sloppy out there. It was raining constantly, kind of like the Jets game. DeMeco will reference that too. And it was the first time they had NFL officials out there who have a much higher standard, especially when it comes to things like pass interference. So there are a lot of penalties. DeMeco wasn't happy about that. The defensive line played really well, which is cool until you remember, like, oh wait, those are our offensive linemen, right? Yeah. So good day for the defensive line. Mixed bag for the offense and defensive backs. We got to see one-on-ones. One of the things that stuck out was Kamari Lassiter made a great play on the ball in coverage of Nico Collins, and DeMeco just loves him some Kamari Lassiter.
Finish! Way to finish, 14! Way to finish! That kid freaking compete every snap. Love it. Every snap. Love it. There you go, Mari. Let's go.
So I picked the answers that most intrigued me from DeMeco's press conference today. And of course, DeMeco addressed the situation from yesterday, the unfortunate scuffle that really wasn't that big a deal, but for one curious incident by Derek Stingley, where Derek Stingley stepped over the line, but he's not an habitual line stepper. So these things happen sometimes. You snap a little bit, you go a little too far. Apologies were made, relationships were mended, and I'm sure everything's just fine. There really wasn't too much to speak of in terms of confrontation today. There was one time where there was a little bit of a dust up. Somebody challenged somebody to a duel. They named their seconds. The seconds got together and they found a resolution. Unlike those boneheads, Hamilton and Burr. So here's DeMeco expounding about his philosophy on training camp fights.
When it comes to the skirmishes in practice, I don't want it. Right? I don't want it. I also understand it. As a player, I was involved in some, so I'm not gonna act like it doesn't happen, right? And the tempers get raised. You know, it's camp. It always happens in camp. You have skirmishes and fights, but what I tell guys is what can we learn from it? For me, if we're in the game, like, are you throwing hands in the game? If you do, then you're thrown out of the game. So for me, it's just learning lesson, man. You throw punches, whatever you do, are you really protecting the team? Because now you're kicked out of the game. So I don't want it. I like it. It's sloppy. I think it's not representative of who we are, you know, as a team, as an organization. It's not what we're out. We're not encouraging that, but it does happen in camp. Just want guys to move forward from it. Nobody's holding any grudges. We're still teammates, still brothers, right? Skirmishes happen in our families all the time. We get upset, but at the end of the day, we're still family. It's still all love.
I've got some family members I haven't talked to in a while, DeMeco. I don't know how much that message resonates with me. And DeMeco was involved with some skirmishes. I can't remember which training camp it was, but yeah, DeMeco's no punk, man. But that's the key. You can't be talking like that. You can't be thinking about, like, I don't want that guy to show me up and make me a punk or whatever. You're a team. It's pretty rare that any kind of animosity is carried over after a fight like that. It just happens. Happens a lot more when it's super hot out. So this ain't fighting weather. No, not where I come from. And I think a lot of times people think that coaches are kind of like, my guys are uncontrollable beasts. That's how I want them. It used to be that way, but in this era where you're load managing guys, you're giving them rest days because the GPS data and the analytics show that they might be a little bit fatigued, all in an effort to avoid injury. The worst thing that can happen is for some guy to get a broken orbital and be out for 6 weeks just because he got caught with an overhand right. I've seen that. The other thing that you don't want to see is a replay of the Jets game from last year where the Texans gave Zach Wilson his best career football game. Zach Wilson was on fire in that game, and it was raining, a lot like today. Not windy or anything, just a steady, hard downpour. And unfortunately, DeMeco reminded me of that.
And when you think about the elements of the rain, right, I definitely flash back to our game versus the Jets last year where when I felt like when we stepped on the field, I could feel that the energy wasn't there, right? We were more so sulking about, you know, what was happening, things we can't control. And the quicker we can get over it, and we didn't get over in that game, and we see the results, and hopefully we can learn from it, get better from it, and understand, like, we don't control the weather, but you control how you respond. A lot of things can happen to us that we don't control. How are you responding?
It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That was either Kyle Shanahan or Epictetus. I cannot remember. But classic stoicism, a philosophy that has run rampant through the NFL these last few years after the book The Obstacle is the Way ran through coaching ranks and was consumed by all the dudes who skipped philosophy class in college. But very true. And I think that game last year was one of the ones that I looked at as probably one of the most disappointing to DeMeco, just because of not just all the things that went wrong, CJ Stroud getting concussed for one, but that, man, if you want the personality of the head coach to filter down to all the players, that was not a very DeMeco Ryans type game. And as a head coach, especially where you set the tone and the culture, I'm guessing that kind of that stayed with him. So I'm glad they had that day. I was happy for the fans. I got to sit up in the stands with the fans and talk to a few people I know. Met a few of you out there. Saw a couple parents of players who watch the channel, which always makes me nervous. Just trust me, parents. If I have to criticize your son, I will do it respectfully, and I will talk about it in a way in which I'll talk about how he needs to improve or do it differently next time. I'm not into bashing players. Okay, I'm into bashing players on other teams. They can all go die, as you know. That's my motto. I think it's originally Epictetus. So a follow-up to the fighting question was basically, well, yeah, but you like that they're chippy and there's competition, right? That they're feeling it?
Yeah, right.
I love the competition, right? And I couldn't be more happier with the competition level in our practices. Our first, 6 or 7 practices? I mean, the competition has been, at an elite level. From defense, offense, right? All sides of the ball are making plays, and that's what you want to see, right? No one side is just outdoing the other side every day. Guys are truly competing, making each other better, and that's what you want to see from the team.
I'll be honest with you. It's been really cool to watch these guys go at it. I've told you the defensive backs and the wide receivers going at it, and seeing wide receivers of that caliber, having 3 of them, Nico, Tank, and Stephon Diggs all on the field at the same time. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen at a football training camp. You do not see wide receiver rooms like that. It's really, really cool. And the other thing is that I think there have been some classic victories for the offense and victories for the defense where you can actually feel good about both sides, where a wide receiver is covered really, really well, but CJ throws the perfect pass to where only the receiver could catch it, and a receiver makes a great play on the ball. That's been really cool to see. There's times like today when the defensive line really hands the offensive line its lunch that I get a little bit nervous, and that's great competition for that offensive line, those young guys especially from center, left guard, and tackle. But we hopefully start to see that get better and better. And one thing I will say about that, Will Anderson, gaining all that weight that he did, now weighing 265 or so, he's plenty fast. I'm not worried one bit that he lost some speed or explosiveness. If anything, he's probably got more strength in his legs now, and he's growing into the appropriate size for him. He was always a guy that looked like he could put on a little bit more weight, especially in his upper body. He's done it, and he looks just as good as ever. But I am looking forward to see him do it versus Laramie Tunsil. If Laramie Tunsil ever gets out there, we got to be careful. He's coming up in knee surgery. He's one of the very best players on this team. But I'm selfish. I want to see Will Anderson versus Laramie Tunsil. Plus, I want to get the iron sharpening iron. Right now, at times when Will Anderson's going against a rookie, it's more like Valerian steel versus bauxite. And I'll be honest with you, I don't actually know what bauxite is. Next question was about all the penalties today. The NFL refs were out there. There were interference calls. There were false starts and procedural issues. That part of it was sloppy. And DeMeco is as unhappy as he can be in these things. He at least through a smile expressed that he was unhappy about it and then talked about the penalties.
Yeah, the penalties would definitely grab a lot of guys' attention as they go back and watch practice. And you have to look at within. Right, and most of the penalties that happen, they start mentally, right? So you have to be locked in. You have to ask yourself, you locked in mentally every single snap? Because if you're not, look how it hurts the team, right? And it always comes back to the team and how are you helping the team and not hurting the team.
I am really glad that the NFL officials were out there today because they've got a higher standard than the college guys. Not because they're better officials necessarily, but when it comes to pass interference and illegal contact and stuff like that. They're a lot more persnickety in the NFL. And for a guy like Kamari Lassiter, who plays with a certain amount of physicality, that's really good for him to know and understand what he can and can't get away with. And man, DeMeco loves Kamari Lassiter. He does. He really does go out there and compete every day. The other part about the sloppiness of some of the offensive execution is that we are really seeing CJ grow into that role of being in charge of the entire offense. And he takes responsibility for them when they are sloppy. He called the team together at one point to give him a talking to, and I think the great thing is, because he established himself obviously with his play, but because he spends so much time getting to know the players, having them over to his house for dinner and everything, I think he's very much capable of having to elevate his volume. Can we say it that way? Elevate his volume at times without guys getting sensitive about it. So that's it for today. Bobby Slowick was on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long. So I'm going to take a look at that. Maybe I'll get that tonight, but maybe I won't. And the Texans have one more practice tomorrow before an off day. Everybody have a great one.